Once upon a time, in a small town, there was a girl named Amarachi. Amarachi was not like the others. She had a big, dark scar on her face, from her forehead down to her cheek, which she covered with an eye patch. She got it when she was little, from an accident nobody liked to talk about. Her father, a strong man with oil-stained hands, always told her, "Amarachi, beauty is not in the face, beauty is in the heart." He worked hard as a mechanic, fixing broken cars so that Amarachi could go to school. But at school, nobody cared about beauty inside the heart. The children laughed at her. They pointed at her face. They whispered behind her back. "Look at her face," one girl giggled. "She looks like a broken pot," another boy said. But the worst of them all was William. William was the school's golden boy, rich, popular, and always surrounded by people. His father owned the biggest supermarket in town. He had the best clothes, the best shoes, the best everything. He was the loudest in the room and the cruelest when it came to Amarachi. Every day, William made fun of Amarachi. "Amarachi," he called her. "Dirty Amarachi, why do you even come to school?" William sneered one morning, leaning on the classroom door. "You look like a monster," he told her. "Did your father fix your face the way he fixes old cars?" His friends laughed. Amarachi did not. She tried to ignore them. She told herself she didn't care, but deep inside, she felt something heavy in her chest, like a stone pressing down on her heart. She walked past them, her scar burning under their cruel stares. But inside, she was bra. One day during lunch, the sun was high. The air smelled of jollof rice and beans, and the cafeteria was full of chatter. Amarachi held her tray tightly, her stomach rumbling. She had saved her lunch money all week to buy a special meal today, fried rice and chicken. But as she walked in, she didn't notice the Snickers. She didn't see the way William and his friends were watching her. She didn't know what they had done. Amarachi reached her usual spot, placed her tray down. She did not see the water on the chair. She sat. Then, splash. The coldness hit her first. It seeped through her skirt, stuck to her skin. The whole cafeteria went silent for a second. Then, "Oh no!" William's voice rang through the hall like a drum. Big Amarachi peed herself. Laughter, loud, cruel, merciless. Amarachi's fingers dug into the table. She could feel her ears burning, her heart pounding. The laughter crashed over her like waves in a storm. A girl pointed. Look at her skirt. She wet herself like a baby." A boy slapped his knee. Maybe she saw her own face in the mirror and got scared. Even the ones who didn't want to laugh smiled behind their hands. Amarachi swallowed hard. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. But she didn't. Slowly, she stood. The room went quiet again, watching her like hungry lions. She turned to William, locking eyes with him. Her voice was steady. "I may be wet, but at least I'm not drowning in arrogance like you." The cafeteria froze. The laughter stopped. Some students whispered. A few nodded. William's grin faded, his face twisting in anger. Amarachi picked up her tray, turned and walked out, her back straight. She did not let them see her pain. But inside she was breaking. And William, he did not like that she talked back. Oh no, he did not like it at all. He wanted to break her completely. The following week, something more terrible happened. It happened again. The rain had fallen all morning. The sky was gray, the ground soft and wet. Puddles of thick brown mud sat in the schoolyard, waiting for careless feet to splash into them. Amarachi held her books close as she walked. The air was cold, but inside she was burning. Burning from the laughter, the whispers, the looks. William wasn't done. No, not yet. He wanted more. He wanted her to break. Amarachi turned the corner, and there they were, William and his gang. "Where are you going, Big Amarachi?" William smirked. His friends chuckled. Amarachi didn't answer. She knew better. She turned to walk the other way, but they blocked her. She glanced down. A puddle of thick, sticky mud lay behind her, dark as night, deep as shame. William grinned. He shoved her. Amarachi fell, hard, face first into the mud. Laughter exploded. William clapped. "Now your ugly face matches the ground," his friends howled. Their voices filled the sky like crows cawing over something dead. Amarachi sat up slowly. Mud dripped from her hair, from her clothes, from her face. Her heart pounded. Her breath came fast. Tears burned behind her eyes, but no, she would not cry. Not for them. She wiped her face, stood up, and walked away. She did not run. She did not shake off the mud. She did not look back. But inside something cracked. Something small. Something important. That evening, when the sun had begun to set, Amarachi sat behind the school building. She did not want to go home like this. She hooked her knees, pressed her face into them, and let the tears fall. Soft footsteps approached. A gentle voice spoke. "Why are you crying, my child?" Amarachi sniffed, wiped her nose, and looked up. It was Mrs. Ella, the school cleaner. She was old, with silver hair wrapped in a scarf. Her hands were rough from years of scrubbing floors. But her eyes were warm. Amarachi hesitated. Then she whispered, "It's William. He won't stop bullying me. He says my scar makes me ugly." Mrs. Ella suspirò. She put down her mop, reached into her bag, and pulled out a small jar. She pressed it into Amarachi's hands. Amarachi frowned. "What is it?" "An ointment," Mrs. Ella susurró. Amarachi traced the lid with her fingers. "Will it make my scar go away?" Mrs. Ella sonrió, pero había algo extraño en sus ojos. "Rub this on your scar every night," she said softly. Then she leaned in closer, her voice like the wind before a storm. "And when someone insults you again, just say thank you. They will face the consequences." Amarachi frowned. What kind of advice was that? Say thank you? How would that stop William? She wanted to ask, but Mrs. Ella was already picking up her mop. Amarachi looked at the jar in her hands. It smelled of herbs. It smelled strange. But she was tired. Tired of being laughed at. Tired of the pain. Tired of the scar that made her different. So she nodded. She would try. Maybe, just maybe, this would help. She slipped it into her pocket and walked home, her heart heavy with questions. That night, Amarachi sat on her small wooden bed, staring at the jar in her hands. The room was dark except for the faint light from the moon slipping through the window. She unscrewed the lid and sniffed. The smell was strong, like crushed leaves and something bitter. It tickled her nose, made her eyes water a little. Amarachi hesitated. Was this even real? Would this really change anything? But she had nothing to lose. Slowly, she dipped her finger into the ointment and spread it on her scar. The coolness spread across her skin. It tingled like tiny ants running over her face. She sighed, placed the jar under her pillow, and lay down. Tomorrow would be another battle. The next morning, Amarachi walked into school. She could already hear the whispers. She knew the moment William saw her, his mouth would open. And there he was, leaning against the classroom door, arms crossed, that wicked smile stretching across his face. His friends were behind him, waiting, grinning. "Hey, Big Amarachi, has your face melted off yet?" he sneered. "That scar makes you look like a witch." The laughter erupted. The insults were ready. They were waiting. But Amarachi did not frown. She did not lower her head. She smiled. Then she looked William in the eye and said, "Thank you." Silence. His grin wavered. "What?" Amarachi shrugged. "I said thank you." Then she turned and walked past him, calm, unshaken. The laughter did not come. The whispers did not follow. William stood there watching her, his face puzzled. Something about the way she said it. Something about her calmness. It did not sit right with him. His fingers twitched. His chest felt tight. But he shook it off. He would deal with her later. School closed that day and everyone went home. But the next morning something strange happened. When school started, William's seat was empty. At first, nobody paid attention. Maybe he had overslept. Maybe he was running late. But by break time, his friends started whispering, "Where's William? Maybe he's sick. He never misses school." The teachers noticed too. William was always present, loud, active, causing trouble. But today he was nowhere to be found. By the second day, students were asking questions. "Have you seen William? Is he traveling? Did something happen?" The teacher sent a note home. No response. By the third day, the principal was worried. He called a meeting and sent a staff member to check on William at his house. But when they got there, what they found shocked everyone. William was bedridden. His body was weak. His voice completely gone. He was terribly ill. William's parents were terrified. Their strong, boastful son was now weak, like a leaf in the Harmattan wind. He could not stand. He could not eat. He could not even speak. His once bright face was swollen, his lips dry and cracked like old firewood. His mother cried. His father paced up and down the room. "This is not ordinary," his mother wailed. "We must find a cure." So they carried William to the best doctor in town. The doctor checked his eyes, pressed his stomach, listened to his heartbeat. He gave him medicine, an injection, even special vitamins. Nothing changed. "This is beyond me," the doctor finally said, rubbing his head. Next, they took